Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this week, we will be looking to the mysterious Chaos Space Marine Legion, known as Alpha Legion.
Yes, the insidious Alpha Legion, experts in subterfuge and covert operations, the Cloak and Dagger Legion of the original foundings, and now, followers of Chaos Undivided. While we will be going a wee bit dark this month because we are chronicling the hordes of Chaos, fear not, we'll try to make it as light as possible.
Indeed, Yuksen. We will make treachery and murder as happy as possible. This month, we'll be going over the Primarchs of the Legion, who the Chaos Gods actually are, and some notable characters, of course.
Well, as you know, Zeckthar, the Alpha Legion are a sly and covert legion, and it all starts with their two Primarchs, the twins, Alpharius and Omegon.
Quite right, rather. The fact that the two identical Primarchs running a single legion is slightly baffling. Thankfully, we have dutifully chronicled the history of the twins, and your answers on who they are and what they are.
Yes, but before we start, if you like our stuff, please subscribe, follow, like, and comment. And I suppose if you wish to help Bob, you can click the support podcast button on any of our descriptions on Spotify.
Yeah, about that. Unfortunately, the minions at Spotify were having difficulty setting up a link to our servers. So if you've been trying to support us, thank you. But I'm sorry it wasn't working right. But good news! It seems that they fixed it. Actually, today they fixed it. So if you do wish to support our channel and help fix Bob, just click the support podcast button on any of our descriptions on Spotify. But enough about Bob. What about the Alpha Twins?
Yes, well, it all starts when the twins were shot into space, like all other Primarchs. And just like the conundrum of the Alpha Legion itself, the history behind them is a mess of information so convoluted that I think the God Emperor himself wouldn't be able to recall correctly how they were found. But through much research, I have found proof of Alpharius' origins to the reigns of Malkador the Sigillite.
Really?
Indeed, Zeckthar. It was handwritten by the Herald of the Emperor's Herald himself.
Wait. Was it or was it not written by the Sigillite?
Malkador spoke the words, and they were recorded by his second personal herald, Tim.
Okay. So are we going off the words of Tim?
Yes. Now that I look into it, there are a few pages missing from Tim's book titled How to Please a Sadist. And from further documentation, I found that Omegon himself said this story was a lie.
Oh. Well, it must be an interesting story. You mind speaking of it? Perhaps a piece of it is true. We're just missing a few pages from Tim.
Yes, well, Tim's book states that Alpharius was actually the first Primarch to be found by the Emperor. According to this tale, after the scatterings of the Primarchs, Alpharius reemerged on Terra outside the Proto-Imperial Palace. The young Primarch was found by the Emperor himself, who had to kill a group of scavengers present to keep the secret safe. Thereafter, the Emperor alongside Malkador the Sigillite raised and mentored Alpharius. During this time, Alpharius was kept a total secret from the rest of the Imperium, even as new Primarchs were rediscovered. One of his first major actions was disguising himself as a First Legion Space Marine during the Palace coup. After testing the security of the Custodes by attempting to assassinate the Emperor in a quasi-blood game, Alpharius became known to Constantin Valdor. Meanwhile, Omegon emerged far from Terra on an empty, nameless world, living alone on the empty planet. Omegon was nonetheless able to come to understand that he was a manufactured being. On the abandoned world, the young Omegon discovered the Xenos weapon that would become known as the Pale Spear. When a group of human pirates arrived on his planet, Omegon was able to steal their ship and escape. He began a long journey towards Imperial-held systems, hearing tales of the Emperor, Primarchs, and the Space Marines. Tim goes on to state that as the Great Crusade continued, Alpharius secretly accompanied the Emperor in the rediscovery of several Primarchs. Alpharius was present as a disguised Space Marine when the Emperor came before Lionel Johnson and Lorgar. In between these endeavors, he continued to lead the 20th Legion, known at the time as the Ghost Legion, in covert operations across the galaxy. Continuing to keep both his and his legion's existence hidden, Alpharius presented himself before Lionel Johnson to offer aid during the Raindown Xenocides, and perhaps cultivate him for War Master over Horus. Alpharius saw the Lion as the Primarch most like him, though he continued his deceptions before the Lord of the First. During the Xenocides, Alpharius identified himself by name but denied being a Primarch. During the Raindown Xenocides, Alpharius finally received the information that he had been long waiting for, eventually coming to the world of Bar Sabor. After battling through the Slaw.
Pardon, brother, but who are the Sloch?
The Sloch are known as one of the vilest Xenos races.
Really?
They've been known as Maggot Men, Dream Eaters, or Carrion Masters.
Why are they known as Maggot Men?
They're kind of look like human beings built up out of like maggots and stuff. They're kind of disgusting.
Like a humanoid body, but it's really like millions of worms.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh, do they have like an empire or something?
Not necessarily anymore. Basically, what they do is basically take over places, and apparently
They're like the Tyranid, right? They just kind of feed on whatever is there, and they just move on.
Except for they also trade artifacts and stuff.
So like sentient worms that act like the Tyranids, but they have the abilities of the Volton.
Yeah, kinda.
That's weird, man. But thanks for letting me know.
They're like, okay. What they do is they'll come down, they'll like exploit humans, and then they'll terrorize them. Or they'll go to renegades and go, hey, we got this stuff. You give us food and stuff. Meanwhile, we may be horribly torturing somebody in the back.
Okay, so they're like worms that act more like the Drukari then.
Yeah, from what's best understood about them, yeah.
Okay, so they're like a hybrid between the Tyranids and the Drukari.
Kind of, yeah.
Worms. That's okay. That's different. Thanks for the info. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, Alpharius and his squad were finally able to meet Omegon, who had been battling the Xenos of the world on his own. The twins immediately recognized one another, with their split soul finally reunited. Alpharius and Omegon agreed the time was right to formally reveal themselves to the Imperium at large, while keeping the nature of their dual existence hidden from even the Emperor, though they were not sure if he was truly unaware of it.
It's actually really interesting.
What?
Well, your story of finding Omegon correlates with a chronicling that I have found that was done by an Alpha Legion Centurion.
Well, what is it? And can it be trusted?
I don't know, but I think you will find this most interesting, Yuksen. Like I said, this chronicling comes from an account torn from the mind of an Alpha Legion Centurion, captured by the Legio Custodes after the fall of Seraphon, and tells the story of the finding of Alpharius. It speaks of a nameless dead world at the edge of the Mandragorian stars, whose alien civilization was wiped out by bloody hands long before mankind first walked on Terra. On this nameless orb, the nascent Primarch fell into a shattered ruins of a fallen city murdered long ages ago. Utterly alone, voiceless, and without aid, he was forced to survive against the torturous elements of the desolate world.
What about his twin brother?
Well, I assume he was there as well. I mean, when discussing Alpharius and Omegon, they are chronicled a lot of times very often as one and the same, which I know doesn't make much sense, but I think that's the point, to just be downright confusing.
I understand that, but if he was with his brother, then he wouldn't have been utterly alone, now would he?
Yeah. Okay, fine. The two were utterly alone, voiceless and without aid, forced to survive the torturous elements of the desolate world. Are you happy now?
Very. Please continue.
I
their solitude,
was only broken after many long years by a new star falling from the heavens. A courser ship of degenerate half-human renegades and alien mercenaries intent on plundering the dead ruins for whatever worth might remain amid the shatters. Instead, they found only death at the young Primarchs' hands, and the twins gained their weapons, their knowledge, and their vessel as their own, and with it set out in search of who had made them.
That is interesting. This ties together with what I found later, chronicled by Alpharius III in his poem of the Hydra and the Wolf. To put it into less lyrical anecdote, the twin Primarchs subsequently orchestrated their coming encounter with Horus, though it was Omegon who took on the title of Alpharius during the incident. During the encounter, Alpharius, or according to their own account, Omegon, used the ragtag fleet of a primitive 1- and 2-man fighters to cleverly put the advanced ship of the Luna Wolves fleet in a precarious position, which necessitated the intervention of Horus himself. Boarding the vengeful spirit, Omegon made his way to the bridge, killing or maiming several Luna Wolves before Horus intervened. Welcoming his lost brother, Horus declared the last Primarch found. Before asking his name, Omegon replied, "I am Alpharius." It is said that instead of immediately sending him to Terra to meet the Emperor, Horus kept Alpharius with him for some months. The two formed a strong bond, with Alpharius and his ragtag alliance quickly embracing the Imperium. Both brothers were greatly impressed with each other, although Alpharius refused to reveal his homeworld, denying that each world in the system that the brothers brought into compliance was his point of origin. Eventually, Alpharius had to journey to meet his father, the Emperor. Their meeting was, as were all times when the Emperor found one of his lost sons, surrounded with much celebration. However, since the Great Crusade was in full swing, little time was spent in idle rejoicing. Alpharius was quickly given command of the 20th Legion, created just a few decades before. Renamed the Alpha Legion, they followed their Primarch on Crusade.
I dare say, brother, this is most interesting. It seems that there are many follies in this recording of history, yet they all seem to be somehow linked. I have actually found a recording by Chancellor Higginbotham that describes another origin of the twins that I think you might find somewhat familiar. In this account, the lost Primarch was deposited on a thriving tech oligarchy world known as Bar Savor. Does that sound familiar?
Why, yes, it does.
Yeah. But before his first solar decade of life, the skies of Bar Savor darkened and the nightmarish Xenos worm creatures known as the Slog descended to feed. You know, those worm people we talked about. Capturing the young Primarch, the one being alone strong enough to resist them, the Slog, kept Alpharius as a curiosity, twisting his mind with their horrors and enslaving him and torturing him as a living weapon to sow strife and discord on their victim worlds before they fell upon them to feast. In this tale, it was the Emperor himself who at last liberated Alpharius, his gold battle barge ramming into the heart of a vast stone ship of the foul Xenos to break it open. The Emperor's wrath, like that of a vengeful god of legend, in retribution for what had been done to his son. For long Terran years after, Alpharius remained at his father's side, as the Emperor undid what had been done to mar his creation. Now, here's the question, Yuksen. Which of these do you think is actually accurate?
In truth, I don't think any of them are fully accurate. I think there may be bits here and there that are.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Though it would kind of be, since, you know, they are named Alpharius and Omegon, it just out of rare humor, I would find it, well, not rare, just out of
Irony.
it'd be humorous if it was more like the original one that they told, where Alpharius was found first because, you know, Alpharius, Alpha first, and then
Right.
Omegon was the last one to be found because, you know, Omega
Then.
last.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't think any of these are 100% accurate, but if you follow the line of thought anyways, I think you actually might find a lot of truth in there. I mean, like, for instance, the last one anyways, when with the dealings of the Slog, it seemed to be kind of like a back note in the original story, but it kind of took a life of its own. So maybe anyways, Alpharius or Omegon, depending on who it was anyways, actually had to deal with this horrible Xenos race around Bar Savor. I do think, though, that it's more likely than not anyways the Emperor actually found them as opposed to Horus, just simply because it seems like if we're looking at it through history anyways, the Emperor was always there anyways to find his lost sons, right?
Right.
So it would make sense anyways that at least one of them was found by the Emperor, but it could very well be anyways that the second one anyways happened to, end up in a fight anyways with Horus and the Lunar Wolves. And then it was like, oh, well, you're a Primarch. And then when Alpharius heard about this, he's like, haha, that's my twin brother. I mean, we could probably do a lot of hypotheses on this anyways and probably never be right. But I'm thinking that is probably... So, okay, so before I give my hypothesis, what do you think anyways is probably anyways the history anyways of how Alpharius was found?
I have no idea. I would lean towards... The problem is that if it relies on their personalities, it just would lean more towards maybe the first one because of the way that he's being kept secret that basically the entire time until he decides to reveal himself as the Primarch, which is kind of part of his character a little.
Right. Okay, so
I really don't. Like I said, I don't know.
Okay, so if I was going to string these stories together, the way that I would look at it anyways is that Alpharius was actually found on Terra. And he was kept hidden anyways by everybody else as the Emperor anyways is, mustering his armies and preparing anyways in the Great Crusade. And then as they continue to march on and they find all these other Primarchs, he keeps Alpharius somewhat hidden because remember anyways, his genomes are part of one of those three that we talked about, right?
Yeah, like
the goofy ones.
I don't remember what they're called.
Yeah, well, it's where he decided to play, he started to play with the genome anyways of humanity, to put it as easily as possible. And it was Alpha Legion, Space Wolves, and
the Salamanders.
Salamanders, right? Yeah.
Just kind of ironic that the first three Space Marine Legions that we're covering happen to be those three.
Yes, ironically, that happened. Mind you, I don't think that we did that on purpose, but it happened that way. But so he's got to kind of keep him a secret because remember, those three kind of chapters were kind of secretive in and of themselves. And the farther they move along, anyways, they start finding all these different Primarchs, and then I think, anyways, that whole landing on a dark planet that was just completely desolate and there was nothing there. I'm betting that's where Omegon ended up crashing.
Okay.
And then when Alpharius finds out, anyways, about his brother, then he's like, sweet, I can go join up with him. He joins up with him. And they're just like, well, we've got to come up with some sort of way anyways that we're both found. Remember, the Emperor is supposed to be infallible, right? Well, he's supposed to be. That's the way he's dictated himself anyways. I mean, he's just always anyways like, I'm just a man. It's like, yeah, but at the same time, you're really not. Not the way anyways you portray yourself. Come on, man. So the concept of him just all of a sudden appearing and being like, yeah, I was there the whole time. That's not going to work. So, he comes up with this plan with Omegon, and then they have this, like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, look, Horus found us, kind of thing.
No, found me. Because remember, they're trying to keep that under wraps, right?
Right. Until he gets back home and it's like, oh, there were two of them? Horus must be really confused.
He's part of Ghost Legion. I'm the Primarch.
Like I said, Horus must have been really confused when he got back to Terra. It's like, wait, but hey, huh?
I'm gonna take off the mask of a couple of other Legionnaires. They look exactly like him.
And then he kind of looks at the Emperor, and the Emperor is just like, congratulations on finding my son. He's like, yeah.
And by the way,
Cool.
the 3 legions were referred to as the trefoil.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, that's kind of my concept anyways. Now, it could be completely and utterly wrong. Like we've already described anyways. All the stuff that we've been able to dig up and find anyways. They all kind of contradict each other. But there seems to be like this one weird line that kind of runs through all of them. And so that would be my kind of hypothesis.
Okay. Well, what happened to the brothers during the Great Crusade?
Well, regardless of their origins and how they were found, the history of Holy Terror records that Alpharius was taken back to the epicenter, or Omegon, depending on who you're talking to, of the ever-expanding Imperium and reunited with his father, the Emperor. There was the usual rejoicing, as we mentioned before, and the pomp and circumstance, but records on Terra suggest that the three spent very little time together. Alpharius was quickly sent to take command of his legion, while the Emperor had many pressing affairs of state by this time, late in the Great Crusade era. Alpharius and his twin Primarch brother, Omegon, shared the same physical appearance, and together served as joint Primarch of the Alpha Legion. The Emperor was aware of Alpharius and Omegon's secret, but whether the creation of the twin Primarchs was intentional or not remains a mystery. The two Primarchs supposedly shared one soul, with Omegon acting as Alpharius' second in command of the 20th Legion. The existence of the twin Primarchs of the Alpha Legion was known only to the members of the Legion itself, and was a well-kept secret even from the other Astartes legions. So like I mentioned before, anyways, Horus and he was coming back and going, congratulations. Yeah, that probably never helped anyone. That probably never happened where he all of a sudden anyways found 2 people. He's like, wait, what? There's 2 of you? Yeah, that probably never happened because as we've just described anyways, they're trying to keep this a secret. So I do have to ask real quick anyways, Yuksen, that does kind of actually break apart anyways my hypothesis. But do you think it still could work?
Well, technically, I know this is even more convoluted, but technically you could claim that what they did then is since nobody really looked into the Legion itself, which is kind of surprising in itself, because if the Legion's also being made hidden, all of a sudden this Legion also pops up at the same time. Try to figure that one out.
But the new legionnaires under the twins' command were tall and strong and reminiscent of their Primarch and possessed their gene sire's cunning and intelligence.
See, that's how they could pass them off, though. So
Right.
say, yeah, the person that's right next to them is actually part of, the Alpha Legion. And
Horus being like, weren't there 2 of you? What? No.
no, see, there's like 10 of us that look exactly the same.
Right.
If not more. I mean,
It also kind of makes sense, though, when you stop and think about it. Like, for instance, anyways, Horus, there was, I can't even remember his name. If you could look this up for me, I'd appreciate it while I finish this chronicling. But there was one of his lieutenants that was actually called in the Luna Wolves was called Little Horus. And the reason why they called him that was because he looked just like Horus, just like a smaller version because he's not a Primarch. You mind looking up his name real quick? I can't remember off the top of my head. But I'll go ahead and continue anyways with this while you look that up. You mind, Yuksen? Cool. Thank you. When Alpharius Omegon took command of the 20th Legion, they were eager, zealous, and completely committed to embracing the Primarch's command and philosophies of combat. Alpharius led his legion, created in his image, to the outer reaches of the Imperium and was eager to join battle and emulate the glories of the older legions. In battle, this youngest legion, driven by its mysterious and tacturnal Primarch, became renowned quickly for its discipline and strict, impenetrable organization and regime, which emphasized the unity of the Legion and its wider actions over the individual Astartes in every aspect.
so
Its home. Did you figure it out?
Unfortunately, Little Horus, his first name was Horus. His full name was Horus Oxymond.
Oxymond. Okay, thank you. Well, there you have it.
What was the Primarch's last name?
Lupercal. Horus Lupercal. But anyways, as I was saying, thank you, by the way, Yuksen, for looking that up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Its hallmark was a relentless application of force and a terrifying level of coordination between warriors and war machines. This capacity for combined arms warfare, speed, and surety of attack were matched only by the mastery of the darker arts of war, sabotage and ambush, stealth tactics, and assassination. Also evident was its desire for secrecy and the talent for misdirection. The Legion kept its distance from the other legions, even when tasked to directly fight alongside them. And it is certain many of the Astartes fostered a sinister willfulness, and beneath the facade, the shadow of mockery. Regardless, the Alpha Legion proved quickly that they could match any of its brethren in glory, perhaps more accurately prove itself superior to them, and its tally of victories mounted with surpassing speed. The Alpha Legion, ever watchful and far more adverse to studying both the strengths and weaknesses of their fellow legions, and adapting the weapons and tactics of the others to their own ends. In this, the Legion was not so different in strategic observances as the Ultramarines Legion and their master Rabute Gilliman, although it is doubtful that the Lord of Ultramar would have cared much for this comparison. Such zealousness to prove themselves as part of the Great Crusade at any cost, and the often over-elaborate and needless complex and malign ways in which the Alpha Legion chose to wage war, saw them quickly gain infamy more than fame. This, coupled with the growing distrust due to their insular and deceptive nature, brought rivalry and acrimony between the Alpha Legion and much of the rest of the legionary Astartes. This caused a problem because the Alpha Legion began to further separate themselves from the rest of the legions. Their tactics began to change, and while brilliant, seemed very un-Space Marine to the rest of the legions. Kind of much like the commandos of the orcs seem very un-orky. Kind of the same concept. I mean, in fact, even Lehman Russ would often scoff at the pettiness and underhanded tactics of Alpharius, claiming his ways of fighting were unhonorable. Alpharius even drew the ire of Mortarion of the Death Guard in the Ulanor campaign, but the Primarch that he really pissed off was Rabute Gilliman. After Alpharius' disagreements with Rabute Gilliman over the supposed dishonorable ways of his legion's chosen methods of warfare, the Alpha Legion threw themselves even further into their preferred methods of operation and set upon the task of proving Gilliman wrong on the world of Testra Prime. Alpha Legion, instead of taking the opportunity to capture the planetary capital city and thus force the world's surrender, allowed the enemy to dig in and defend it so that they could then expertly take the defending forces apart in a number of different ways. After a solar week of suffering seemingly random mishaps and deadly sabotages, as well as brutal ambushes, the defenders were forced to capitulate, having taken 90% casualties. When Gilliman asked why the 20th Legion had not used simpler strategy, Alpharius is reported to have replied that they avoided it as it would have been too easy. Gilliman raged at Alpharius' conduct of war, labeling the drawn-out operation as a waste of the Emperor's bolt shells. Only the War Master Horus, always impressed by Alpharius and his work, praised the Alpha Legion's skill. Okay, while we might not agree on the early years of the twins, I think during the time of the Great Crusade we can start to understand their personalities a bit more. What are your thoughts on the twins?
My thoughts are one of they are master manipulators and masterminds, basically. They do have a straightforward viewpoint when it comes to the fact that they want to keep their stuff secret. So some cases they say that anybody who gets close to their secrets, they kill off, no matter if they're innocents or not. In other cases, supposedly it's been penned by one of the Primarchs. That instead what they do is they take people that know too much and basically indoctrinate them. In my opinion, I think you would agree with this, is more likely because of their aspect of thinking ahead and thinking of, okay, how can we utilize different resources? They take people who know too much, and if they're useful, utilize them for their own purposes. But if not, they would just kill them off.
Right. I think that they think of humanity more along the lines of numbers, as opposed to or pieces on a table of warfare. I don't think that they look at humanity as like a feeling group of people with their own personalities and whatnot. I think they look at them more like a general would. It's like, okay, we have all these different pieces on the table anyways. This is how we move forward. This is how we complete whatever mission that we have. I kind of honestly look at them, and I agree with you anyways. I think they're masterminds. I think honestly, they're almost like, have you heard of that game on Terran 42 called Chess?
Yeah.
Great game, by the way. But one of the things
Some people believe so.
Some people, I think most. Okay. You would agree with me.
Guess again on that.
Okay, you would agree with me. It's a good game, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but one of the things that I like about that game is the concept that you have to think ahead. Every piece that moves, anyways, you have to come to a concept, anyways, of like, okay, if they move here, then I move here. If they move there, I move here. And the better you get at the game, the more you look farther ahead. So instead of one move ahead, you start looking at 2 moves ahead, 3 moves ahead, 4 moves ahead. And when you talk about like grandmasters, anyways, in the game of chess, you're talking about people that think like 7 to 8 moves ahead, sometimes 10 to 12. That's Alpharius. That's Omegon. They're literally looking at it, whatever problem in front of them, anyways, and they're thinking 10 moves ahead of everybody else, which I think honestly is really what drove Rabute Gilliman mad, just simply because he thinks, anyways, he's an empire builder and like the smartest of probably his brothers. Yet here's this little dude, Alpharius, anyways, that seems to be always one step ahead of him. What's that?
Or 2 of them.
What? Okay, Rabute Gilliman doesn't know there's 2 of them, which is also a huge advantage. Remember, they keep that as a secret. So he's always under this concept, anyways, is like, I know, anyways, the best stratagems for any kind of military. And first off, anyways, that in itself, anyways, I think is appalling because, I mean, if you're going to look at generals, I mean, you got to put in Lionel Johnson probably at the top, along with Horace, right?
Well, as we know, Alpharius possibly helped groom Johnson. I mean,
yeah. He's the one that told him about strategy.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
No wonder he's so good.
Well, yeah. So it's, I think, anyways, that whole concept of, I mean, he is a grand strategist, in my opinion, and the way that he looks at the world, that's kind of how he looks at it. He doesn't. To me, anyways, he's probably like a good person that you'd want to hang out with if you want to have a few beers with, but at the same time, anyways, it's along the lines of, He's okay, anyways, drinking some beers at the end and having a good time. But in the back of his mind, when he first meets you, anyways, he's thinking, okay, how do I kill him?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And then once he figures that out, he's like, okay, now I can have a good time. I think that's his first thought process whenever he goes into something. How can I beat this person? And once he figures it out, he's like, okay, well, no, we'll take a step back and we just kind of enjoy whatever is going on. But I do have to ask, anyways, what happened to the twins?
Well, mind you, this is once again a story that may or may not.
Right. We are talking about Alpha Legion after all.
Well, obviously, they sided with Horus in the heresy, but what came after that is a different story. And we must start with the Battle of Pluto.
Oh, okay. Well, what happened at the Battle of Pluto?
So, this is how the story goes. During the subsequent Battle of Pluto, Alpharius confronted Rogel Dorn in a chamber locked inside of the Hydra Fortress moon in Pluto's orbit. He killed Archimedes' team hunting him, but left Archimedes mortally wounded and alive to watch as Dorn teleported into the chamber.
Excuse me half a second there, Yuksen. Who's Archimedes?
Archimedes was a captain and the chief Huskarl of the Imperial Fist Legion.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Sorry, carry
on. Both Dorn's Huskarls and Alpharius' Lernians teleported in, and the Primarchs slaughtered the other's warriors. The two battled with Alpharius dealing Dorn many wounds, using his speed to stay out of reach. Throughout the fight, he tried to convince Dorn that he was there to teach him how to win, to expose his weaknesses, that he could not win the current war, and how there needed to be a new type of war. He also claimed that Dorn didn't understand what he was fighting for, and they both cared about the future. Only he knew the truth regarding the conflict, and he did not fight for Horus, but for Dorn instead.
Interesting.
Eventually, he tried to kill Dorn with a blow from his Sarsanata, aka the Pale Spear. Yet Archimus saw the strike and tried to intervene, but reeled harmlessly off the spear's haft. Archimus was unaware that Dorn had seen the strike. The Imperial Fist Primarch outplaying Alpharius by using a move he used against the giant orc decades earlier by stepping in to the shot and taking it in his shoulder to pin Alpharius in place. He then grabbed the spear and sliced Alpharius' hands from his wrists before slashing him across the chest, stabbing him with his own spear, and finishing him off by cutting through Alpharius' skull with his mighty chainsword, Storm's Teeth.
Pardon me, Yuksen. You mind if I clarify something here?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Okay. So the concept was, let me get this. Let me see if I get this right. Anyways, so the concept was that he actually stepped in, anyways, to a spear thrust, took it through the shoulder, but then drove it forward anyway, so that he was like directly in front of Alpharius, so that he couldn't actually pull it out. So then all of a sudden, because Dorn's significantly larger, anyways, he can kind of manipulate that. So
Right.
he's like. So you've got Dorn on the outside, Alpharius in the middle, and then you've got a wall like right behind them. So when he takes it through the shoulder, he actually drives forward anyway, slamming him into the wall, right?
Right.
Okay. So then Alpharius can't move, and then Dorn can. Although that is kind of confusing. How did Dorn actually get the spear from him?
Well, probably after he sliced off the guy's wrists.
Yeah, but they said that he did that through with the spear. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It'd make more sense that he used his chainsword. Yet again, another concept, anyways, of Alpha Legion's confusion, anyways, on any story.
If you think about it, if you think about it to begin with, how is he able to use the same move on Alpharius that he used on a giant orc, since orcs can get to be much larger than Primarchs and definitely much larger than regular Space Marines?
Right. So if he tried slamming it in, slamming himself into an orc,
generally they're stronger than
the orc would just laugh and just like toss him.
Yeah, the giant orc.
Make a lot of sense.
I mean, your standard average orc warrior, just as soon as it first grows to average height, before it even continues growing, is over 2 meters tall.
Also not 6 feet. But yeah, this whole concept of how he ended up beating Alpharius, anyways, kind of to me, anyways, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then again, this is also Alpha Legion, so
Yes.
So sorry. I mean, I try to clarify. Well, I clarified what you said, anyways. To me, anyways, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
but,
it doesn't.
Sorry.
I had trouble when I looked it over too. It just doesn't quite make sense.
Sorry, carry on, sir.
Okay, so anyways, Archimus soon passed away, but a team under his second, Kestros, found the Primarch and now deceased Archimus. Dorn then hid Alpharius' appearance from the Loyalist and his death, promoting Kestros and others with direct knowledge of the events to the Huskarls, who replaced those who died. Dorn sought to deny Alpharius any acknowledgement or honor. Far away, Omegon sensed the death of his twin, and he grew distant. Upon being notified that Horus demanded to speak with Alpharius, Omegon took up the name and became his twin brother. Alpharius, or at least an Alpha Legionnaire claiming to be him, or maybe even Omegon, reappeared alone on Ulanor during the muster of traitor forces in preparation for the Siege of Terror. No other Alpha Legion forces were present in the system, making many other traitors wonder how Alpharius could even be there at all. Before Horus's dark triumph on Ulanor, Alpharius appeared in the War Master's command tent and gave him a cylinder which contained a detailed layout of all of the Sol system's defenses and infrastructures. Alpharius then took out a dagger and shattered it in his hand, throwing the pieces at Horus's feet before leaving. Abaddon demanded that Horus kill him for such insolence, but the War Master instead let Alpharius go. What happened to Omegon?
Well, who knows? This is what I've found. Omegon survived, or Alpharius, depending on who you're talking to, survived the Siege of Terra. And in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, the Alpha Legion did not retreat to the Eye of Terra like the other traitor legions. Instead, they moved on to the Galactic East, following new objectives of their own devising. Whether or not being brought to battle with the Ultramarines was one of their objectives is unknown, but it occurred all the same. It was on the world known as Escrador that Alpharius and Rabute Gilliman would meet for the last time, supposedly. Believing that Gilliman would adopt his standard deployment procedures, as later outlined in the Codex Astartes, Omegon was surprised by the Ultramarines, as a splinter force, including their Primarch, made a quick strike at the Alpha Legion's headquarters. Omegon was reportedly happy with such a development, as it allowed him to demonstrate the superiority of his flexibility, multitudinous, and unexpected military strategies of the notoriously precise, methodical, and perhaps even tactically slow Ultramarines. As it goes, both Primarchs met in combat, and Omegon was killed.
Really?
Well, probably not, but let me explain. Believing the combat over, for what Astartes Legion could ever survive the loss of their Primarch in battle, the Ultramarines were taken by surprise by the remaining elements of the Alpha Legion when they struck back a solar day later. The Ultramarines, who had launched the attack on the traitor Legion's headquarters, were harried so mercilessly that by the time they had returned to the main body of the Ultramarine force, their casualties were almost totaled. I would say probably maybe 5 dudes and Rabute. Regardless, after a solar week of constant fighting and heavy losses, the Ultramarine strike force managed to reunite with the main element and quickly evacuated the planet. Even though they had lost their Primarch, the Alpha Legion had soundly beaten the Ultramarines, who proceeded to bombard their foes' position from orbit. It should be noted, however, that Alpharius' death is still considered suspect even by the Ultramarines, and he may still be at large. Now Yuksen, well, we kind of talked about earlier anyways, just kind of the problems that we have with these stories anyways, on how they died. To me, I think probably one of them died, but I'll give an explanation for that in a second. What do you think? You think they're both dead, or do you think one of them's dead, or maybe they're both still alive?
To tell you the truth, because of the fact that they're supposedly able to interchange, since they're so close in resemblance to just regular legionnaires, they're able to interchange between them. I have no idea. For all I know, they could both be dead even before Dorn came across one of them. But I'm guessing...
Okay, whoa. Hang on a second, Yuksen. I do disagree with that aspect.
Really?
Yes, one of them had to have been alive anyways before that.
Why?
Just simply because of the aspects anyways of the Primarchs at that point. If he was dead if they were both dead before that anyways, the Emperor would have stepped in at some point and been like, well, we lost a Primarch. We've got to have somebody else anyways take over the Alpha Legion. So I do think that they're both still alive, at least by the time you hit the Horus Heresy.
Well, that was during the Horus Heresy that Dorn met up with them.
Right.
Yep, with them.
Well, no. You were saying anyways that you could even see anyways that they had both died before that point. I don't see that.
Okay. Well, either way, I truly have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them were still alive, especially when looking over it again. The recollection when it comes to Dorn is so skewed, and the battle itself doesn't make sense. And why on earth would he care whether or not? Why would he even hide Alpharius's body? Makes no sense.
It's kind of like, okay, so
you've slammed a chainsword through his skull. How much of
his left?
He resembles anything.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. But okay, so this actually reminds me a lot of Terraform 2's history. There was a guy by the name of John Dillinger. You know who I'm talking about?
Vaguely.
Okay, so he was known as like a gangster during the, I want to say, right in between World War One and World War Two. No. Right before World War One, because it was during the time of Prohibition, or right
Okay.
after that. And he was a bank robber, and he's considered the most notorious bank robber ever. And he eventually ended up getting shot by these guys from the FBI. And the one guy who had been tracking him anyways, they found this guy. They finally shot him through the head. And he comes in anyways, and he sees who they've shot, and he immediately goes around the corner and vomits. And to me, I mean, a lot of people are just kind of like, well, okay, fine. He didn't like the fact anyways this guy got shot through the head. Which kind of makes sense anyways with the blood and the guts. But at the same time anyways, to me, I think honestly, he went into this corridor and found this guy dead. The guy they all thought anyways was John Dillinger, and realized they'd shot somebody else. And he went, oh, that's no good. And just like, he's so distraught about it anyways. He ends up vomiting around the corner. Kind of see that whole concept anyways with Dorn a little bit. I'll give you that point, because Dorn anyways, he finally gets through this whole amazing combat anyways. He finally ends up winning, and it turns out it's not the guy that he was looking at, and he's like, oh.
Well, plus, like I said, how could anybody tell afterwards anyways if he literally put this giant chainsword through the person's skull? There isn't much left when you have a chainsword go through your skull.
Right. I will also say anyways, though, that there's a part of that story anyways, and maybe anyways it is just part of the story. This is why I think at least one of them has died. All right, hear me out, Yuksen. So at the beginning of this whole thing anyways, Alpharius leaves this captain. What's his name? Archimedes or
Archimedes.
Archimedes, thank you. He leaves him alive, and then all of a sudden, he's the guy that accounts anyways for this story, right?
No,
so this is,
he dies.
well, I know he dies, but but before he dies, he gives accounting anyways for Dorn, which is also suspect.
No, he can't give an account for Dorn because he is literally dead.
Well, he didn't die yet. So when the rest of the guys plug in anyways, they teleport in anyways, Archimedes anyways goes, yeah, whatever he says. And then Dorn gets to tell his story.
No. Archimedes was dead before other people showed up.
Oh, he was. Is that what you're thinking? I'm thinking he was there to just long enough anyways to clarify. Yep, he killed Alpharius, and then he's done. That's the way that I've kind of read through this history. But you're thinking he was dead before people actually showed up.
Yeah.
So it's really just Dorn telling this story. Well, Dorn's not somebody anyways that normally lies. I will give him that. Dorn is actually he's a pretty honorable individual. But I could say...
On the other hand, also in the story, he decides to hide the body, something that I don't think Dorn is accustomed to doing.
That's a good point.
Or from what I know.
But I will say this anyways. There is a clerical point anyways in this story that just to me anyways makes sense that he might have actually killed Alpharius. And it has to do with the aspect anyways that both bodyguards swarmed into this place. And both Primarchs anyways ended up killing both of them. You do not kill a whole host of bodyguards anyways without being a Primarch, because the Primarchs are...
What I get about that though is they claim that the Primarchs killed both parties, right?
Right.
What the freaking heck were the bodyguards doing?
Well, they were trying...
How about we try killing off maybe the people around the Primarch? Well, the Primarchs duke it out. Maybe that makes more sense. That way they can't knock off our Primarch before... Doesn't that make more sense to you?
Well, it makes more sense anyways for the Alpha Legion.
Doesn't make sense.
I I think, anyways, the Huskarls, anyways, when they came in, anyways, they immediately took a look at the situation and they said, okay, the biggest guy here, anyways, we need to take him down. And they went after, anyways, the Primarch.
And you think that the Alpha Legion would also go, hey, let's take down Dorn?
I don't think the Alpha Legion would have done that.
More likely to go after.
You have a good point, sir, Yuksen.
Both Dorn and
the whole story doesn't track.
Yeah, none of it tracks. Because I don't think Dorn is that stupid when it comes to raising his legion, basically. Because the Huskarls are supposed to be basically like bodyguards also. So you think the first thing that they want to do is try to find a way to prevent other people to get to him.
Right. And well, which also, okay, so in that case, anyways, it kind of makes sense anyways, because Alpharius, anyways, is such an awesome fighter anyways, that he just kind of just like runs right through them. He just kills all of them. And while he's doing that anyways, Dorn actually just like mows through. Because Dorn, I mean, Dorn's not the greatest fighter, but he's still a Primarch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he just like mows through anyways, Alpharius' guys. And then all that's left anyways at the end of this battle anyways is just them two. And still they go at it.
Yeah, I still find so many flaws with the story.
I think a lot of the flaws anyways goes into the concept that it shows Rogel Dorn anyways is like this amazing hero. And I think one of the reasons why they plugged that in is just maybe anyways, Alpharius, while they're dueling anyways, actually strains a little bit of a doubt for Dorn about what he's doing, which is something that Dorn can't have.
I don't know. Like I said, I definitely, I have issues with both stories. I definitely don't think that Gilliman killed anybody.
Oh, of course not. Gilliman didn't kill anybody, in my opinion. It was just kind of like, and literally every single chronicling that I've ever found anyways on the situation, it's just Gilliman killed Alpharius. Not Omegon, Alpharius. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If Dorn had already killed Alpharius, then you must have killed Omegon. But obviously, anyways, that was their big secret, that Alpharius was both of them. But still, it was just kind of like, and it's just randomly, anyways, it's like, yeah, and he killed him. And even the Ultramarines don't even believe that. Now, mind you, anyways, here's kind of an interesting point, though. In the 42nd millennium, there has been known, anyways, to the High Lords of Terra, anyways, that there has been a Chaos Lord in, I think it's like the Eastern sector,
which is where the Alpha Legion migrated towards.
Right. Yeah. And it says, anyways, that there is this Chaos Lord describing himself as Alpharius. So the High Lords of Terra, anyways, they sent. Ironically, it's kind of weird though. They only sent 6 Vindicari assassins.
Only 6. You do understand that any assassin from any of the main temples are ridiculous, right?
No, I understand that, but at the same time, I say only 6 Vindicari assassins because they're going against a Primarch. If they really actually believe it's a Primarch, you need to send more. It'd be like if what's his name?
No, these are Vindicar. These are snipers. They aren't people who are trying to infiltrate, run over people like an Eversur.
That's what I would have sent, by the way. I would have sent a few of those guys. But I would have sent them along with these Vindicari assassins. But anyways, they show up. They snipe down a bunch of guys, anyways, that are claiming themselves as Alpharius, which kind of makes sense. But then 5 years later,
we're all Alpharius. We're all Omegon.
But here's the interesting
part. None of us are.
Yuksen. But bear with me. 5 years later, after their expedition, anyways, trying to kill this guy known as Alpharius, they ended up finding these 6 Vindicari heads of these assassins. They were found frozen in the food storage halls of the High Lords of Terra. Which, by the way, it's got to be a really bad day for the servant anyways, or the cook anyways, going to grab anyways food he's going to be preparing for the High Lords of Terra. I will say that. The guy's like, okay, let's get the meat out of the fridge. Oh no!
On the other hand, if it was on the flip side, if it was one of those people that really hates his job, he's like, ooh, I know what I can do for the next meal.
No. That's very orcish thinking there, dear sir. No, I mean,
I have a message. Apparently, it is this.
I'm just thinking, anyways, on one of those heads, anyways, was like a little sticky note that, anyways, that said "F off." We can get you, and we will, if you can keep doing this. And guess what? They didn't send any more assassins.
Well, no. If they probably approached the temple again and asked, the temple probably would have been like, no.
So
even if they asked, they're like, no.
We are kind of running out of time, anyways, here. So to finalize this out, anyways, do you think any of them are dead? Or do you think either of the two are dead?
To tell you the truth, like I said, I don't know. My first instinct is that in these particular stories, I find enough fault in both of them that I could say that probably both of them survived at this point in time. Because there's too many inconsistencies.
Right.
And let's face it, when it comes to the one with the Ultramarines, it's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, the one with the Ultramarines, in my opinion, is silly. Nobody died there. It's the one with Dorn.
Oh, yes, there is a lot of Ultramarines.
But I mean, honestly, the one with Dorn is the one, anyways, that if you really want to look at it and be like, did one of them die? There's a higher probability, anyways, that one of them died fighting Dorn.
Yeah.
Did he? That's kind of an interesting question. Now, mind you, anyways, one of the other things, though, that I find very interesting about this, anyways, is that like you talked about, the Horus heresy is in effect at this point, right? And Horus is marching on Terra, and Alpharius or Omegon appears in the War Master's command tent, and he's got a cylinder that contains the layout of the Sol System's defenses and infrastructure. I mean, this is literally something, anyways, it's just like, hey, if you want to know how to get around these defenses, this is how you do it. And then he takes out a dagger and just like literally stabs it to death. And then leaves. How does he get away with that?
Well, here's one of the things, and here's one of the things I think Abad wasn't thinking about, but maybe Horus was. Maybe Horus was actually a little bit afraid if he did do something.
Yeah.
This is the guy that plans things ahead. Is like, oh crap, if I kill him, is he rigged with a bomb or something, and then we're all screwed?
No, I think I think Horus was thinking along the lines is like, really, I think at this point there might be two of them. So if I kill this guy, the other guy is going to come back in my sleep anyways and murder me.
Well, like I said,
honestly, that's got to be it, right?
He's got to have. I'm thinking he was just wary enough that he knew that if Alpharius came in and did that, he had something up his sleeve. There is no way that he would have walked in there and just gone, this is what I think. Break, throw, and then leave.
Peace. Yeah.
Peace. So he may have done that, gone, peace, and walked out. But which would have been actually pretty awesome. But
well, no, yeah, I think you're right. I think Horus, anyways, at that point, anyways, was a little bit afraid of Alpharius, anyways, on the concept of like we talked about before, anyways. This is the Grand Master. This is the person, anyways, that is like 10 moves ahead of everybody else. And he comes in, anyways, and he actually shows you, anyways, that he has the defenses. And then he shatters it in front of you and then just leaves. Mark my words. Alpharius, anyways, and Omegon do not do anything without means or cause.
Right.
And I think that's what worried Horus.
Or another thing is that, oh, great. So if he is on my side, another aspect that you could be thinking is, first of all, I probably won't want to kill him because, you know, he may have something that'll come back and kill me. On the other hand, or for all I know, my entire alliance for that matter. Another aspect could be that he
Is worried
knows
that
Alpharius' skills. So he's just like, okay, on that hand, is he trying to tell me something by the fact that he's destroying this information right in front of me? Should I know something now because of this? Like, should I even be attempting something?
Or it's the simple fact, anyways, that Horus figured it out. He figured out that there were actually two of them. So he's sitting there anyways, and he's like, if I kill Alpharius and Omegon's left over and I killed his brother, he's going to shift sides. He's already on the tip of the spear. He's already anyways trying to figure out anyways if he's going to go one way or the other. And if we kill one of them, then the other one obviously anyways is going to look at that and go, well, yeah, I'm going to go with Terra.
Yeah.
And
well,
then,
they were already curious about Jagatai Khan because they didn't know anything about him. It's like, I don't know who he's gonna, and the loyalists were also like, I don't know who he's gonna side with. I don't know either. Somebody ask him. You.
Unfortunately, Yuksen, that is definitely a story for another time, and we will definitely get into the White Scars in the future. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Join us next week as we discuss the Chaos Gods. All 5 of them.
5? I thought there were only 4.
Well, one is a very well-hidden secret and a bane to the other 4.
Oh, right. You're talking about the renegade god Malice, right?
Yes, actually, indeed. Tune in next week anyways to hear about him. But if you enjoyed our Vox, please like, subscribe, comment, and follow.
And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments or send them to us at www.asharaka.com. That's www.asharaka.com.
What great, Yuksen. Well, that's all the time we have for today. And as always,
This is Zeckthar.
And Yuksen, signing off.